me. You look down on me, you pity me? Walk away, that's right. You know why I didn't take the job? Because it's too small! I don't care about it! It's nothing to me! It's a bacterium! I travel in worlds you can't even imagine! You can't conceive of what I'm capable of! I'm so far beyond you! I'm like a god in human clothing! Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips!
I feel weird about the whole situation around Batman Caped Crusader. I love Batman. You know that about me. It's not like it's my whole name and brand or anything. But whenever the cape and cowl is present, I am. Whether it's the animated series and the grand grappling drama of Kevin Conroy, the fresh, new, exciting exploits of young Caped Crusader in the Batman, or even a Silver Age take on a serious Dark Knight in a silly, wacky world in the Brave and the Bold. Whatever he's in, I'm down for it. So when I heard there was a new Batman show on its way, no one was more excited than I. But what's the catch? Well, it gets even better. Bruce Timm and James Tucker are both attached. Incredible talent that have breathed life into the animated stories of the Dark Knight since BTAS and the Brave and the Bold. We have comic book writers like Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka who have told amazing, gripping stories in the original art form from where Batman sprang. And if that didn't grab me, didn't absolutely take me and not let go, Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves is part of the project. The guy who made apes talk and terrorize massive cities in Cloverfield. And he made the greatest Batman film since Mask of the Phantasm in The Batman. So why could I not be absolutely thrilled, totally fanboying over this Batman show? There are a couple factors at play here. One, the distance between the release of the show and its announcement. Caped Crusader was announced at the same event that My Adventures with Superman was announced. And that show came much sooner, so there was less time to forget and even less for my excitement to dwindle. To put more of a practical picture in your head, both shows were announced at DC Fandom in 2021. Both shows likely in some stages of production, months or even a year beforehand, but that's all conjecture. The first season of My Adventures premiering in mid-2023, while Caped Crusader just premiered this August in 2024. A whole 3 years to My Adventures 2. Now, this is nothing to get in a frenzy about. Animation takes time, and it's great the production team gave their animators said time. It's just the distance in time since the announcement and our other problem that cinches it. DC, and dare I say all comic book media right now, besides the total standouts, are very bad at marketing their shows and films. I'm really not sure why. I don't know if it's a budget concern or just complete total apathy, but the total lack of marketing for Caped Crusader I think damaged a lot of the hype around it, considering the massive volume of comic book media right now. Not to mention the fact that this is a Warner Brothers production that they didn't even want to put on their own streaming service and then just shopped around. I still don't get that. And this is not even mentioning the fact that the marketing we did get wasn't too good. Lackluster marketing or not, when it came time for the show to drop, my expectations, my hype that I could have had completely, totally bottomed out.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
So it came to the morning that Caped Crusader dropped on Prime. The day before, I had binge played the entirety of Tomb Raider 2013 for a solid 10 hours, and when I was done, I had found it was 3 in the morning, but I wasn't sleeping yet. I sit on the couch with some snacks and a drink, and I glance over at my TV, seeing what I could watch, and then my eyes fall upon Batman, Caped Crusader. Now, at this point, I looked at it with really no feeling, good or bad. It's still more Batman, so I put it on, and I had no expectations for what I was about to witness. To be honest, I haven't been as excited about Batman media lately. For some time, actually. Whether it's pedantic nostalgia bait, or it's just too much dark and grim fare for my taste. It's not that it's all bad, or that the past was all good. I just had no feeling towards any of it. And I'd lost that feeling you get as a kid when your favorite show came on, and that's all that existed in my universe. I needed that kiddish joy again, and I think in small and sizable ways, Caped Crusader delivered. First order of business is talking about the newest version of the Penguin that has caught much fire from the anti-woke brigade. First things first, no, this new take is not down to wokeism, what have you. I don't much care to even bring that group of people into any conversation because it is all foolish and just boring to me. While the new take on Penguin was slightly jarring on first reveal, I strongly believe the writing and general characterization justifies this change. Plus, this is no radical change from the Cobblepot we all know and loathe. Oswalda is still as scummy and conniving as any other interpretation, with an added spice to the character in a couple key ways. I really like the twist of the Penguin as a lounge singer type. Really lends itself to the setting of the show in 1940s Gotham and adds more period flavor to the show, as well as making her the patriarch of a Cobblepot crime family, which I think is a really fresh take on Cobblepot that really hasn't been done before, and I'd love to see it fleshed out more in following seasons. Just above all of that, this is just really good world building for this new Gotham that we're becoming acclimated with. Honestly, I think Minnie Driver does a terrific job in the role, and from interviews, I think she's really passionate about this, and she's a really fun actress. And is most definitely a standout villain in the season, and I just wish we got more than one episode with her. So there's not as much talk about as some of our other characters, especially since she is the villain of the intro episode of the show. I will say my two favorite moments of her character are her straight up murdering one of her sons because she believes that he ratted her out, which he didn't, and when she faces off against Batman for the very first time. These two scenes laying out a pretty layered and exciting and ultimately menacing take on a classic villain. The next one we're talking about, I know, is a bit of a hot topic considering the range of depictions we've had of Selena Kyle in the past, but honestly, I really dig this one for a couple reasons. One, it's historically accurate to the rendition of Catwoman that they're trying to depict. This was a Batman show going heavy on the Golden Age era of the character, and that includes its villains. A lot of the people watching this show are more acclimated to the current version of the character with a more grounded origin, a la Batman Year One. And that's great, and if you don't like this Selena, that is okay. But as I always aspire to on this channel, I want us to understand the intentions here and what Bruce Timm and co. are trying to accomplish. Selena Kyle is a rich heiress in Gotham, and in her titular debut, we see her try and fail to become Catwoman, to be the greatest thief there is. And why does she fall?
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Shut up, Alfred. She fails because she's inherited all she's had and hasn't had to do anything for herself. And of course, even having all of that, she wants more. and having Selena as this elite thief who's no good at being a villain, they are furthering the themes of the season, playing on the role that the rich and powerful play in the machinations of good and evil in Gotham City. I believe they put Selena on Bruce's path to interrogate his role in all of this. You can't merely make Bruce Wayne a farce, a fake, a mask, because there is a name, a family, an economic force behind that name, behind that face, and he can't ignore it. There is no true romance between the Bat and the Cat yet, because for there to be any connection between them, the Batman has to be connected with Bruce Wayne. The final 3 core villains I want to talk about here are Two-Face, Harley Quinn, and Rupert Thorn. Now, don't kill me just yet. I'm not ignoring Clayface or Nocturna or even James Craddock, but they will be left for a later section in the video, don't you worry. Going off of the rich and powerful bent of Catwoman, with our fresh new take on Harley Quinn, we have something vastly different. And honestly, I think this is some of the best material of the show, period. This version of Harley is the most interested I've ever been in the character since Arlene Sorkin voiced her in BTAS. And I gotta say, I really appreciate from the interviews with Jamie Chung, her fascination and of fandom for the original show, and her utmost respect for Arlene Sorkin as the originator of the character. Genuinely, I think Jamie Chung gives an absolutely stunning performance as the clown queen of crime in this series. It's a slow burn, which I really like, and honestly, I would have loved more of it, much more. But what we have here is really special. Jamie's tone switch from Harleen Quinzel, psychiatrist, to Harley Quinn, the clown queen of crime, is absolutely chilling.
You've got to learn to laugh it off. How's our patient doing this morning?
I can't run anymore, please.
Now. If you're not bleeding, you're not working hard enough. Isn't that what you said to your son?
First things first, I think it was a really good decision to distance Harley from both Arkham and the Joker outright, to give her some more room to really establish herself as her own entity. Because personally, I think the problem with a lot of Harley stories is that they can't be told without her primary abuser in it. And that's when you've got something wrong. The storyline that Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Alan Burnett and company told through BTAS and BTNBA is really powerful and horrifying, but important to tell the story of an abusive relationship. But I also strongly believe that abuse cannot be her only story. Now, with that out of the way, let's just sink our teeth into Jamie's performance here, because it's really great. We have 2 sides to Harley Quinn. We have Harleen Quinzel, the professional, the therapist, the kind-hearted friend, the fun-loving college buddy of Barbara Gordon, and Renee Montoya's unlikely lover. The other side is Harley Quinn, a cold, sadistic villain who weaponizes her intelligence and knowledge of psychiatry against her more abusive patients, the rich and powerful. The unstoppable tide that Batman and Gordon are talking about in the last episode of the series, Harley Quinn is fighting it herself, just in all of the wrong ways. And I think that's really fascinating that this version of Harley Quinn gets to be a dark mirror of who Batman is and could be if he goes too far. That's the beauty of it. Harley Quinn is clearly committing crimes, but it makes you question if her reasoning is even wrong. These men who would prey on the weak, on their employees, on the rabble, the peons beneath them. She is merely seeking her own justice, just like Harvey. Just like Harvey Dent in BTAS, he is a present character for the entire season, even before his late transformation, but they take his presence in a very different direction than the classic show we all know and love. Harvey is portrayed by the ever-wonderful and brilliant Diedrich Bader, who is no stranger to the DC Universe and animated roles in it. He has not only played Batman in The Brave and the Bold, famously, but also Steve Lombard in Superman Unbound. He also played Guy Gardner in a LEGO DC feature, as well as playing Booster Gold in Justice League Action, and finally Lex Luthor in Superman Red Son. I swear, this guy is collecting DC roles like Infinity Stones. Jokes aside, he plays the role really well, but not the way you'd expect based on previous interpretations of Dent. This Dent is different. He's cynical, he's a little slimy, but ultimately he wants to do good for Gotham. He's just extremely jaded because of his long work in the city, which is contrasted by Barbara Gordon's unending belief in the goodness of people, and even more, the pursuit of justice and the ability to always make things right. I think the whole arc for him can really be summed up in what Batman said in the last episode.
The four of you can't hold back the tide.
I don't care. You will testify, Dent, because you don't bend with the world when it goes bad. You push back.
The character of Harvey Dent is this Shakespearean tragedy of a man trying to push against the tide that is trying to swallow the city of Gotham in its darkness, never backing down, but it kills him. Rupert Thorn is the tide that is consuming Gotham, consuming its people. He is the thorn in the side of all things good and decent in the city, and he kills the one politician, an entirely imperfect one all the same, who would stand against his bribes, his threats, his guns, his venom, his acid. He is the head of the ever-consuming hydra of evil in Gotham. Harvey talks about how if you take one down, 3 more will come in his place. The pointlessness of fighting back. Ultimately, that's what Thorn represents. He puts so much fear into the hearts of those who might do good, be good, that they hide away, they make concessions because their children need to breathe another breath. Thorn is performed really brilliantly by Cedric Yarbrough, who lends his rich and booming timbre to the slimy, conniving kingpin of Gotham City. There's not much more to say about Thorn that I won't expand upon later in the video, but I really appreciate the lengths the show goes to making my skin crawl whenever this guy shows up, and giving us this paradoxical monster of a man who still loves and wants to protect his son. It's humanizing, but not to a gross extent, which I think a lot of comic book media seems to be doing these days. Not everybody needs to be Killmonger. Sometimes evil people are just scum, rotten to the core, and the writers of this show display it brilliantly while not compromising on the concepts and ideals of the show being very real and down to earth. Now let's meet the team behind Batman Caped Crusader. The team of Batman the Caped Crusader feels like a Batman fan's wet dream. We have Bruce Timm, who was a massive part of the artistic identity of Batman the Animated Series, the show we all know and love. We have Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams, just absolute cinematic giants, the former delivering on one of, if not the greatest Batman film of all time, live action at least. You have Ed Brubaker, one of the all-time greatest comic book writers in the biz right now. And finally, you have James Tucker, who has practically touched everything that is gold in the DC animated landscape. I love that man. The foundations of this project, based on the announcement at DC Fandom, is two specific things. The idea of doing Batman the Animated Series again and more, expanding on the concept with the exclusion of television censors, and the latter, the Strange Days black and white smoky noir Batman short from years past as the proof of concept. At the end of the day, the fact that Cape Crusader exists seems to be the fault of James Tucker, according to Bruce Timm, funnily enough. Quote, "They pitched it to me and I was like, I am so not interested. I didn't want to have to compete with everybody's memory of that show, because a lot of people grew up with it, and that's their favorite version of Batman, which is awesome. So I called James up and told him what prompted the whole thing, and we started talking about Justice League, and then he kept swinging the conversation back to BTAS." End quote. Why revisit BTAS? That's the question I'm sure some of you are asking. Many of you were not before, but you are now, because it's not what you were expecting. You were expecting more of the same, and I think in some respects the show delivers on a lot of good things that came from BTAS, but at the same time, much to my excitement, it does a lot that distinguishes it. I think the most fascinating thing about all of this is that there's some wish fulfillment to it. The conceit of going back and taking something that worked and doing it in a fresh, different way. But even more, the fact that when BTAS happened, James Tucker didn't get a chance to join in on the fun. And James Tucker loves Batman. Quote, "I started my career when BTAS was in production. I was in Chicago's subcontracting at a studio that was doing the first season of Animaniacs at the time. But I knew BTAS was happening. In fact, we got some test footage on a VHS from BTAS. I think it was from the episode On Leather Wings. I saw it and my head about blew off. The studio I was at was under consideration to work on an episode, but my boss, the head of the studio, was like, no, we can't do that stuff. It was just too advanced. It wasn't funny animal stuff, so I thought, there goes my opportunity. And I just went on and made Animaniacs. But I always thought that's what I really need to do, where I really need to be. Then I ended up coming out to LA and getting a job on Superman the Animated Series, interviewing with Bruce and getting that job after BTAS had ended. And we ended up doing more Batman later, but it was different in tone. And fast forward to Cape Crusader, wishes do come true, kids. End quote. I think that's the beauty of it all, that just as we, fans, are foaming at the mouth at the thought of more Batman the Animated Series, and screaming when it's not exactly that, those behind the scenes and the voices on the screen are just every bit of fans that we are. I love Batman, and I love when Batman is creepy, spooky, smoky, and everything in between. And I've been in love with horror in film noir for as long as I can remember, and some of the best Batman stories lean on one of those genres, or even both, crafting the most fascinating stories featuring the world's greatest detective possible. Ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with getting more noir Batman in film and television, and it's hard to even get crumbs of it, but now this show and the Batman film have really scratched that itch. Why is noir perfect for The Dark Knight? Film noir is a genre whose origins sit firmly at the heart of the Great Depression, where the Batman was born. A noir film tends to follow a disillusioned detective or private eye navigating an ever-complicated and morally gray world, trying to solve some mystery in a New York or Chicago type setting, wading through corruption and evil, being tempted and betrayed by a femme fatale, and ultimately the detective is left worse off at the end of his journey than at his beginning. If that description sounds eerily similar to more than a few Batman stories, well, there's a reason. Film noir is baked into the DNA of the Batman character, and even more, it is foundational to Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and Alan Burnett's version of the character, and Gotham in BTAS. Now, how does Caped Crusader weigh in on the genre of film noir and the general spooky edge of the DC universe? The first thing I want to touch on is the aesthetic of the show. From the very get-go, you can get a taste of what made the animated series so freaking gorgeous. And it's this palpable graininess and textured feel to the art style that makes the show feel as if it was drawn on cell sheets as opposed to digital animation. I think this vibe really goes a long way to getting people intimately connected to the art style of the show, which I would describe as Batman the Animated Series through the lens of Bill Finger by way of James Tucker. Even more than the texture of the art style, the direction of the show feels so much more different to BTAS than I at first expected. It feels more filmic, it feels almost theatrical, and the connection between Batman as a character and us as the audience feels totally different in the way that in BTAS, we have this instant intimacy with Batman. But with Caped Crusader, we're put at arm's length, which I think is important to set an uneasy tone for the show that is baked into themes and this Batman's arc. It goes even further than all of that. The shots are framed and lit in a very intentional way, inspired by films like Caligari, the Universal Monster films, and Citizen Kane, lending itself to the time period and genre. The shadows are even heavier than BTAS or even the Burton films to set a completely unique mood that no one can be trusted, and Batman could be sneaking around anywhere, trying to solve his next case. I think the classic film inspiration is especially apparent in the second episode of the series, written by comics legend Greg Rucka, the episode titled, "And Be a Villain." A direct quote from a Shakespeare monologue, citing the theater and film inspirations that will show up all across the episode. This episode follows Basil Karlo, the first Clayface from the comics, a floundering B-movie heavy, who is a tremendous actor respected by his castmates, but will never get the big career-defining role because of his not-so-good looks. For context, the heavy in classic film is the role of a villain, basically expressing the reality that Basil Karlo will never score the lead role with the way he looks, despite his clear talent. Typecasting was and always will be a rampant problem in Hollywood. If you're proven good in one role, that might be all you get, and they expect you to feel lucky for that. This was especially rampant in classic horror, the B-movies of the time. It was easy to get work, but it was cheap, and you might never get work in what one would call higher pictures, just based on the material you're working with. What's even worse about Carlo's situation is that he fell for a female cast member who respected him well and saw past his face and lauded him for his clear talent, lamenting his situation, feeling that he could never be with her if he looks the way he does. He seeks facial treatment, getting something experimental from someone who worked on set, but as the Clayface story goes, he gets more than he bargains for. Throughout the episode, we follow Batman through a classically styled murder mystery, a fake out of Basil Karlo dying, the girl castmate kidnapped. They're trying to continue production as the police are also investigating. Renee Montoya specifically. This is a brilliant episode that gives a lot of texture to the world as a whole, while also taking a classic origin story, doing a completely fresh spin on it with a really good dramatic flair. Bravo, Mr. Rucka. Well done. As we move deeper into the season, things get crazier and crazier as mass psychos and even the supernatural enter the scene. I think the two episodes that got me the giddiest in the season with gothic and comic fanboy joy is Night Ride and Nocturne, the two supernatural focused episodes of the show. One on the Gentleman Ghost and the other on Nocturna, the vampiress that Bruce Timm so desperately wanted to use way back when for BTAS. First things first, I was so unbelievably happy to see they brought the Gentleman Ghost on the show, because man, oh man, do I love that pompous old dead man. The first time I saw the Gentleman Ghost was on The Brave and the Bold when I was a kid, and ever since I've been in love with the concept of his character. And I think they really outdid themselves on how they expanded upon his character and used him to further the themes of the series. James Craddock is
the most devious bastard in New York City.
But no, really. All jokes aside, I think they utilized the character brilliantly in challenging the parallels between Craddock and Bruce himself, and how Bruce unknowingly treats the Help with disdain, as per Lucius's words in the episode. There's a lot of really interesting subtext in the episode of Craddock being this staunch loyalist, this Robin Hood who does not steal from the rich and give to the poor, but quite the opposite. He steals from the poor to give to himself, something he repeats in the afterlife because only the well-bred can be spared change. This not only makes it easier to hate the guy, but it also gives a history to the corruption and evil that is at the foundation of Gotham City and furthers the themes of the series going into the final episodes. The tide is not new. Really, the heart of this episode is making Bruce realize two very important things. What Bruce does and is matters, and that Alfred is important to him, even if he doesn't act like it, but he should. In this episode, as Batman fails to defeat the Gentleman Ghost in two separate encounters, he decides to explore other means, despite his stipulations that ghosts and ghouls could not exist, because there are enough human horrors on this earth for him alone to fight. Batman talks to a local shop owner in Gotham that knows of the supernatural. In the comics, we know him as Papa Midnight, a big supernatural player in the DC universe, facing off against John Constantine many a time. Seriously love him in this. Please bring him back. I swear, if you don't, I don't know what I'll do. But after the two talk for a bit, Batman is given clear instructions to burn the deed of Craddock's home, as well as some incantations and symbols to scrawl into the ground as you do. In a small bottle, a vial of sorts, Midnight saying, "It's a boon for a boon," saying he'll know what to do when it's time. Batman and Alfred begin the ritual. He needs Alfred with him because they need the blood of a nobleman to complete it, the Pennyworth line sufficing. As they're proceeding with the ritual, the Gentleman Ghost attacks, them having to wait him off as they try to complete it. The deed is seemingly burning. Craddock going with it, but at the last second, as he's burning and fading into the fog, into smoke, he invades Alfred's body, the body of a nobleman. Batman has to fight Alfred, Craddock relishing in invading Alfred's mind, looking for precious secrets, pushing at the idea of him keeping secrets from Bruce. As they fight, Bruce manages to win by burning the deed himself, finally sealing the Gentleman Ghost, sending him back to hell. In the glass vial that Midnight gave to him, as Alfred hits the ground, seemingly dead, Bruce shouts at him, scared because he realizes for maybe the first time in his life how much he truly means to him. This mission, this fight of his, it isn't just about him anymore. All the moments Al tucked him in at night, all the nights he took care of Bruce, and how he couldn't do any of this without him. And even if he doesn't ever show it, how much he loves him, because Alfred is his father. More than Thomas was ever allowed to be. Death did they part. He calls his Pennyworth a fool. Alfred a fool. Because he can't live without him. Emotionally stunted he is. Even he knows that. This Batman cares. He's learning, but he cares. Batman Caped Crusader truly understands the ethos of the character more than most. Certainly more than a lot of Twitter users. In Nocturne, the other supernatural-centered episode of the series, there's a carnival in town and kids going missing. The kids, funnily enough, are named after an array of robins as a little wink and nod, but nothing more than that. These kids are being sucked dry by Natalia, or as we would call her in the comics, Nocturna, but the show's take on her is just a bit different. In this version, Natalia craves life force energy to stay alive. Her brother had found ways to keep her cravings at bay, but when they stop in Gotham to put on a show, she becomes out of control, going for child after child. But the sad thing is, she's a child herself, struggling to control her needs. As she gets hungrier and hungrier, she becomes erratic and refuses to listen to her brother, who says she can't keep doing this. As more kids go missing, Bruce goes off to investigate, not just because he's Batman, but also since it's Leslie Tompkins' kids, who he knows from his childhood as she worked with his father. I'm really glad they brought her back for this show. I think Leslie is really underrated as part of Batman's cast of character, and really is invaluable in adding more texture to his world. As he investigates as Bruce Wayne, he quite literally gets the crap beaten out of him by the whole circus troupe, including Waylon Jones, aka Killer Croc, slowing down his progress in the investigation. When he wakes up, Bruce suits up and searches for the brother and sister, finding Anton, Natalia's brother, dying, crushed under a bookcase, telling him that it's not her fault. She's just a child, but that if she isn't stopped now, she won't survive when the sun comes up. Batman searches for her throughout the circus grounds as Natalia finds her latest victim, young Carrie, who is hiding in the woods with a slingshot, waiting to find the kidnapper and firing off some rocks their way. Carrie soon realizes that Natalia isn't all that friendly and tries to escape, running away to hide as Natalia looks for her. She hides behind a tree trunk, Natalia picking up the whole thing, grabbing Carrie before she can run away, trying to feed, but before she can finish, Batman arrives, stopping her. They fight for a while, Batman saying he doesn't want to hurt her, because she's just a kid. She beats up Batman, not afraid to hurt him. Carrie coming to his rescue. To stop Natalia, he tells her that she killed her brother. Her falling to her knees, not knowing what to do, in complete disbelief. She killed her brother. Then the sun comes up. Batman remembers what her brother said. She can't be in the sun, or she'll die. She gives up. She just wants to die and be done with it, but Batman won't let her. Natalia protests, and Carrie says, "Who cares? She's just a monster. Why save her? Why save her?" Because he's Batman, and he saves everyone. He shields Natalia in his cape and walks off through the forest, Carrie following him, hanging onto the edge of his cape. There's some very key moments in the latter half of the season that hit at the heart of why this show just gets Batman, and it works so well. We've already discussed Nocturne and the Gentleman Ghost episode, which were big character beat episodes. But in The Night of the Hunters, we get a moment that informs Batman's character and how others see him in a really interesting way. Others being Jim Gordon. During the episode, the police are trying to capture Batman after an embarrassing press spread of photos of Batman beating the crap out of Bullock and Flass. So they try some typical Sting tactics, but none of them work, so they enlist Harley Quinn to psychologically evaluate the Dark Knight. She explains that the way you get to him is through costume freaks like Clayface or Catwoman. So Flass and Bullock get a bright idea. They go into GCPD lockup and find their tool of baiting the Batman, Firebug. They take him in their car and drive off, pretending to have a car problem. They stop, allowing for Firebug to get his gear and suit and take off to light a local apartment complex on fire. Gordon and Montoya manage to get on the scene before things can get really bad and go into the building to try and save as many people as they can. This is Gordon's old beat. These people can't take this. As Gordon is traversing the building, he meets Batman for the very first time, saving children. Batman doesn't say anything. Just, there's one more that says everything you need to know about Batman in actions more than words. As everybody's getting outside, Bullock and Flash corner Firebug at the top. Flash saying he'll talk if they take him in, so Bullock shoots him falling into the hood of a car, dead, to keep him quiet. Of course, the mayor awards them as hero cops to lead the task force, but that's just how things are in Gotham City. The next character-defining moment happens at the end of the Harley Quinn episode. Quinn's house is blown up. Quinn fallen into the water below. Barbara couldn't save her. It's a really gorgeous shot. Purple skyline, moonlighting. Barbara is completely distraught. Batman goes straight to saying that Barbara's emotional attachment made her reckless. But he's not saying this because he doesn't care. It's because he does, but he doesn't know how to express it sometimes. That's why he calls Alfred a fool when he almost dies and calls Barbara reckless, because he doesn't know how to express his care in words. He says he has to go. She knows. He says the two words that you'd never expect to hear from this Batman, but he says it. I'm sorry. Finally, we hit the last episode, the climax of the Two-Face two-parter. The evil and the corrupt at the heart of Gotham are closing in on Harvey Dent as Barbara Gordon, Batman, Jim, and Montoya are trying to keep him safe long enough to testify against Rupert Thorn, but Thorn has other plans. He has the bent cops and Thorn's men hunting them. Flash and Bullock at the lead. When Batman, the Gordons, Montoya, and Dent are all together, Dent doesn't get why they're doing this. Why they're all doing this. Putting their lives on the line. He said it is all pointless because Thorn is inevitable. The tide is inevitable. You can't push back the tide, he says. And we go back to the heart of Batman. You don't just bend with the world when things get bad. You push back. It's that hopeful defiance that is the heart of the character. It's that never-ending, almost pointless, but never-relenting fight for justice in a city that is completely apathetic, that tries to swallow you up in its greed, its concessions, its evil. Try as they might. They couldn't save Dent's life. But Dent's soul? No matter how many concessions he made, that wasn't for sale. Flash fires a shot towards Barbara Gordon, Dent jumping in front of her, taking the shot. So much is lost in this moment. Their one chance to take down Thorn once and for all. A public servant who might have changed Gotham for the better. And Bruce's best friend, gone in an instant, in a gunshot. The gun. Batman grabs the gun and aims it at Flash. Flash calls it a righteous shoot. Dent deserved to die, he says, as the man who killed someone in his city. I wouldn't call anything you do righteous yet. You can feel the anger in Batman's eyes, pure disdain. Until this moment, the show hasn't really made a clear, distinct point about where Batman's morals lie, how he feels about this instrument of death, the gun. This is the moment when all of us were on the edge of our seats, terrified of what Batman might do, because this static image has been at the heart of all Batman discourse for the past decade or so, for better or for worse. What will he do? Bang! 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 Click. Everybody looks in shock for a moment, then the camera reveals. He didn't shoot him. He fired all around him. He just couldn't do it. He walks further, punching Flash out, and he throws the gun into the water. A triumphant reminder that no matter how bad things get, you don't bend to it. You push back. Dent may be dead, Thorn living it up one more day after another. But Batman triumphed over his worst natures. He's made friends, allies in this battle of his. Even more, he sees the value in the friends he's had all along. The odds may seem impossible to sway the tide of evil consuming Gotham City, but Batman has overcome an impossible the odds may seem.
4 of us against an endless tide. Dent was right. Those are terrible odds. But I'll take them. Thank you, Penny. Alfred.
He moves through the night like a shadow. For some, he is a rumor, a name whispered in the corridors of the underworld.
Get everyone on the street! We gotta stop him now!
They're about to find out he's all too real.
If you think I've been bad news before.
Batman, tonight at 6.
Peekaboo.
Good guys wear black.